We're good. Okay. So what I really want to talk about is what we've been calling a climate justice project that we launched through InterOccupy, which is a website that I've helped build, called Occupy Sandy. And many of you, I'm sure, are well aware, Frankenstorm, Superstorm Sandy, all storms collide, and it leaves any estimate from 18 to 40,000 people homeless in New York. And so the way that the Occupy movement decided to respond was fractionalized, disorganized, but somehow it worked. And so for me, as a sociologist, the question is, how? Right? This is actually a very pragmatic presentation. I don't care which side of the capitalism pole you fall on. I don't care what side of the socialism pole you fall on. What I care about is that we start to experiment with different communication forms, and that we keep an open mind about the possibility that the old ways still work, and new ways can be crucially important. And I want to make a caveat here about social media. They're owned by corporations. They are not neutral technologies. They are crucial technologies. And if we can leverage them, if we can use them in certain ways, we have to be mindful of the ways in which they will erase our information, the ways in which they will infiltrate, the ways in which they will collect data on us, of course. But I think right now what we're doing is we're sort of in the glory days of social media, where not a lot of people know how to patrol it, not a lot of institutions know how to surveil it. They're working on it, but right now there's so much information out there that it's very difficult to stop people-powered formations like Occupy Sandy from happening. So this is a picture of the devastation of a city block in Staten Island. There used to be houses and people here. And Occupy Sandy decided that it would come together. It didn't actually decide. The name Occupy Sandy itself is somewhat folkloric. No one will take responsibility for naming the campaign Occupy Sandy. But the actual ideals, the values were very simple. Mutual aid, not charity. Right? The idea was that you weren't giving money and things to this group to redistribute it, that actually people were involved in an enormous mutual aid project. And so what ends up happening is Occupy Sandy collects a ton of goods using different churches as routing hubs, as well as, which I'll get into later, the on-call every 2 weeks. InterOccupy will say, hey, we'll set up the call, we'll send you the link, and you can run the switchboard yourself. We don't actually facilitate for you, although we train you how to do that. And so I conclude by saying, this idea that another world is possible, of course, yada, 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 it's already happening. But it's actually really kind of cool if you live in it, because there's information swirling about. And what it takes is a dedicated group of individuals willing to grasp that information, make it sortable, make it usable, like I showed you on the front-end websites of InterOccupy or Occupy Sandy, such as the OS Sandy campaign. And when you make that information useful and you sort it and you have a dedicated team, your insurrection, your intervention into the world actually becomes quite limitless. A check.
So Joan hit us on the technology that we use to organize ourselves. Obviously, there's other technologies that we can use to be more efficient in our food, our water, our energy, and we're going to get into that now. I think we should set up a switchboard for EcoSocialism LA or EcoSocialism, and we'll be on that as well, hopefully in the next few weeks. So you guys, everyone who signed up, will be on that as well. So now we're going to go to Eric Rehder and jump into it, brother.
Okay. Wanted to kind of take on sort of the bigger picture that I think draws a lot of people out to these kind of things, and the starting point that is powerful and really frightening is that the future is really scary. When you look 50 years into where this ship is going, this ecosystem that we're living in, like what is it going to look like, is really a frightening thing. And I think a lot of people know that. Like, that's not terribly profound thing. That's in the media quite regularly. Most people, I think, know that in various ways, and it causes most people, very understandably, to kind of curl up in a ball and try to hide from it, because how the hell do you deal with that? Especially when what's generally on offer is, well, you know, maybe we can recycle some bags, some bottles, we can drive a Prius, maybe vote for a Democrat here or there or something, and it's like, those aren't things that give people the tools to deal with the problem that they're looking at. Like, there's something there, but it's wildly, you know, far from what needs to be done, and people know that, and you know, that doesn't empower them, you know, with the real problems, you know, when you're looking at the long view. And so that's kind of what I wanted to start getting on, was what is some of that we need to be tackling with. And you know, I think a couple key points was one, that many of the major hurdles to sustainability are really political and not technical so much. I'm a technical guy, whatever, great, but technical is certainly not the full answer. That being said, innovation and technology, there are very important needs for that to be able to get to, you know, a real sustainable world. Can capitalism, you know, innovate? Can capitalism lead that? You know, I don't think so. Imagine most people here also don't think so. But what could innovation look like? What are the decision-making kind of roles that are needed to go into this kind of a future? Because we need to be finding good answers and really helping to set the stage for where we're headed to. You know, but there's always, you know, what we can do right now, and there's always, you know, just tremendous amounts of things, the low-hanging fruit. And I think one thing that's often, you know, sort of missed with talking about environment and energy policy is ending the wars, you know, or just ending the military. I mean, the military on any given day uses 12.6 million gallons of fuel. It's one of the largest consumers of energy on the planet, and that's short of all the just sheer destruction that they do. This is just them sailing around being nice guys. They're absolutely destroying things just through that, let alone the depleted uranium and just, you know, that's what they do. That being said, it's also interesting, you know, the way that our capitalist system works, that one of the major funders of sustainable energy systems is the U.S. military, because they see energy as a critical spot for them. They're not interested in the planet or anything. They don't care. I mean, they're the military. They're looking, days like this are important, that brings people into connections and starting to see the kind of resources we have. And the more capable we are to deal with these challenges, the more our numbers will be able to grow, and we'll be able to become more powerful and to be able to challenge the questions or the answers that are always forced upon us. Thank you.
Capitalism is not going to innovate our solutions that we need for energy. Eric focused on solar. I'm sure other people have other energy solutions. We're going to move on to
me?
Gene Warren. Thank you.
Okay, you hear me? Yeah. That's fine. First, a little bit about my background. And walking into the building today, I passed Huey Newton on the wall and Malcolm X on the other wall, and I was in Friends of the Panthers back in 1969, 70. So it was some of my early involvement in political movements. One of the leaders actually here in L.A. and knew Geronimo Pratt, who spent 27 years in jail, framed up by the LAPD plus the FBI and many other agencies. And then I continued on in other left organizations, one of the founding members of Solidarity in 1986. And then in 2005, a number of us in Studies in Global Justice organized a class that we first put on in 2006 called Converging Storms, the Crisis of Energy, Capitalism, and the Environment. So these issues that I actually first started talking with comrades back in the early 70s and never got to first base for about 30 years until the aughts. I've been at it for a long time. So let me say I'm very thrilled that this conference is taking place, and I think it's going to have an impact on the left in LA from here on out, and that we can put on more of these and really deal with these issues that are being put forward here today. Now, how many of you understand, have heard the acronym EROEI? Raise your hands if you know what that is. Boy, see, this is energy return on energy invested. That's sort of what my talk is going to revolve around, plus, secondly, growth, and particularly exponential growth. And it'll have a little bit to do with what Eric brought up here about solar energy, and is technology going to be a silver bullet for what humanity is facing in this century? A little bit about how quickly this has happened too, because I talk to young people a lot, and they always bring up ancient history when you try to bring up what's happened over the last couple of hundred years, which is about the history of industrial capitalism. Capitalism itself started a little earlier, but say 200 years for industrial capitalism. And I knew my grandfather, he was born in 1875. He died when I was 17. And, he was a year old when Custer bought it at the Little Bighorn. And it was before the oil age. He was 28 when the first airplane took off in Kitty Hawk. So he's seen a lot, and the problems the world faces, most of it happened since my grandfather's birth. A little bit before that, early industrial evolution. This has happened very, very fast in the world. And so understanding what's caused it and where we're at is important, and I'm really glad that this is all happening. Because this is an existential problem that we're facing.
And they're faced with that many people. With one blow of an axe, they were able to break the levee. Because what better way is there to conquer society than remove its ability to feed itself? I feel like today we're a conquered society, because almost none of you, maybe if you're lucky you grow a tomato or lettuce or basil, but none of us grow our own food, no matter how you look at it. All the power to you if you do it. And just so you know, it is practiced today. The people carrying on this tradition, it's legit, it's real. And you can go take a tour next time you're in Mexico City. So what is aquaponics? Aquaponics is the future of farming on planet Earth. And it merges two well-established industries, aquaculture, which is fish farming, and hydroponics, which is growing food in water. And in between, there's some secret sauce, a lot of bacteria. Just another modern example, you can go to Lake Inle in Burma, practicing the same tradition. Looks very similar to Chinampas. They have obviously accessing their food production on boats because it's floating in water. Probably goes back 10,000 years from China. This could be anywhere in the world. It could be Ecuador. It could be Thailand. Anywhere in Southeast Asia. I like to call it Seattle. And you see these beautiful innocent pens here in the bottom. And what is that? Well, it's still really hard to tell. Although that's aquaculture. It looks so serene and innocent and pure until you feed them, and you get a sense of how much life is in there, an unnatural density of life in a very small space. Aquaculture is, by most modern practices, has a lot of waste. Maybe you're not aware, but last year was the year that more fish that we ate came from the land, that came from the sea. And I want to use the word land a little bit loosely. It really means it was farmed versus wild caught, because some of it is open water aquaculture and a lot of it is terrestrial based. And most of the fish that we eat, if you eat fish, 90% comes from Asia and most of it comes from China. And if you knew what they're feeding their fish, you wouldn't want to eat it.
Want to eat it.
No matter where you get it from, Whole Foods or elsewhere. Hydroponics. It's one method of growing food. I'm going to skip this slide. So what is the fuss about aquaponics? Why am I so excited about it? There's a long list of reasons why. But if you just focus on the bottom three, it's the most water efficient way to grow food on the planet, period. It exceeds organic standards, and for some people who care about taste, you'll be pleasantly surprised. My road, just a quick story about myself, to aquaponics began right there. That's actually the road. It's a road leading to Volta, California, which is a suburb of Los Banos, which really was misspelled, was to be Los Baños, which is a very literal translation of the experience of living in that town. If you've ever driven the 5 in the summer, you'll see these trailers right here, these 2 giant bathtubs, traveling empty on the 5 or the 99 and returning back full. I would drive a truck like that. They'd end up in a cannery that looks like this. And in a box that looks like that. This box right here is a pallet, 4 feet by 4 feet, weighs about 2,000 pounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tall by I don't know how many deep that is, many more than's in that picture. Next to a railroad track, which was almost a mile long. That is one cannery. The company had 5 or 6. There were several companies all producing those same tomatoes. They look beautiful, vine ripened, but you wouldn't want to eat them. I could stand on one and it wouldn't crush. The most genetically modified Franken food you can ever imagine. And every one of you have eaten that. If you had paste picante sauce or Heinz ketchup, as a childhood, any tomato-based marinara sauce in your life, you ate that, whether you like it or not. So, flash forward 10 years, I set out to build the first aquaponics system of its kind in LA County. It's the first commercial farm, very small, but it's still the first.